ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's live stream. I am joined by a regular. Our regular viewers will be familiar with our Deputy Chairman, David Richardson. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, Richard. Great to be with you yet again.
Yes, we've got lots to talk about this evening. David's been scouring the newspapers for interesting stories, so we've got a few items there to talk about, and a few things from other sources as well. So do fire comments in. We'll try and engage with comments as we go along. But before we get into the things we've got planned, I thought the big story today in the media is of this terrible shooting in Sweden. And there's not much information come out about it at the moment. But I thought just a couple of points I'd like to make about this. Because it does seem that this sort of thing is becoming more and more common. That people who are just totally deranged going on killing sprees. In Europe, and it's been an issue in America for a long time, but it does seem to be becoming more common. And I'm sure a factor in it is the internet. If you've got someone who's really taking a turn in a dark direction, they're becoming very embittered and resentful, full of hatred, obsessing with weapons, obsessing with violence and good, whatever. It's so much easier to do that with the internet. With the internet, you can 24/7 be obsessing over and consuming material related to whatever you like. I mean, be that, pornography and all the problems that creates, I think, in terms of like sexual assault and rape, etc. But also in terms of this sort of violence as well. So you've got someone who's taken a turn in that direction, but then that just can get fueled day after day after day, hour after hour through the internet. And I'm sure that's a very significant factor. What to do about it? I'm not really sure. I mean, to what extent can you censor the internet? We don't want the government monitoring what people are searching for on the internet, gathering data on that. So I mean, maybe there is a technological solution to it, something that would just flag up concerns in this area. But what do you think? The significant responsibility? Not responsibility. The internet's a significant factor.
Yes, the factors. There's no doubt about it. We need age-related bars to the internet, which the government's been mulling over for I don't know how long. I don't think they've still got round to it. But there's materials. I mean, just about every atrocity that happens. We know this one that happened in Southport. I couldn't pronounce his name, but yeah, that's pretty dreadful. The background there, the internet inspiration that he was getting.
Yeah.
It's I'm afraid as well that the Pandora box is open now, isn't it? There's no putting the genie back in. And how we handle it as a society, well, it's just running all over us, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I remember
measures
a few years ago, every time there's a report in the newspaper of some sort of sexual assault or rape or whatever, or paedophilia, it would always be, when it had gone to court, part of the report would always be found to be in possession of a large quantity of pornography. You could almost cut and paste it into the story. It was always there. You probably don't tend to get that now, because people don't need to download things. People don't need to have a pile of this stuff in their house. It's just the internet search history that's the significant thing now. The other thing as well, I thought was a factor in these. I say we don't know anything about this shooter in Sweden, but in general, when these things happen, often it's someone who's got a grudge, feels they've been mistreated, and they can't handle it. They can't process it. They just nurse it and brood on it, and it becomes bigger and bigger. So I think another message is here, just the idea of your forgiveness, moving on. That it's forgiving. It's partly for the sake of other people, but it's partly for the sake of yourself as well. Whether you want to call it forgiveness or not, people need to realize that to be like angry on an ongoing, permanent basis, as if you think by that you're doing yourself a favor, but yeah, if there's a more widespread understanding that like maintaining burning anger permanently over whatever, maybe something unjust did happen, but if you just keep that flame alive, it's going to burn you up.
Oh, it will destroy you. And this is what the trouble is. People then take what's happening around them and they force things into their own worldview, and they start to interpret events in favor of their feelings and of their hatred. They misinterpret all sorts of things, and that then feeds in and just increases, and until eventually they're unable to. I mean, America is just horrific by far going on there.
There is a culture that encourages people to see themselves as the victim of appalling injustices. Which, okay, very often that's the case. People do get mistreated. There are injustices. But I think it's almost celebrated as it can become your identity. Your purpose in life is to express or whatever the injustice. So anyway, very sad.
Yeah, we had Burns Night, didn't we, just the other night? And there's that wonderful line, which just touched on this. He talks about someone who nurses their wrath to keep it warm, and that is what these people are doing. They're actually feeding it. They're not trying to starve it in any way. They're nursing it, and it becomes their identity. Absolutely fine.
Right. Good evening. Do fire the comments in, Nicola and
Nicola. Yes. Good evening. We know Nicola.
Mrs. Scorpion as well. That's you. And Ines, keep firing the comments in. Just something else to mention before we go into the prepared material. I mean, we could talk about problems in schools every week, but there are lots of school strikes in the offing at the moment. One of them because of behavior. Teachers in a mainstream school, this has happened in special schools before. This is in a mainstream school in Glasgow, basically saying they're refusing to work because the pupils are so badly behaved. It's dangerous to work there. I mean, that's pretty appalling situation. And then there's also the cuts to education in Glasgow. Teachers are striking about the cuts in teacher numbers, which, you could argue that they've got a case there. It's hardly going to help the educational system. But why is Glasgow so short of money? Because of the equal pay claim. This is a direct result of Glasgow losing more than half of its annual budget a few years ago through the equal pay claim. So they're having to cut teacher numbers. And so the unions protesting about this, they won't quite be the same unions that push the equal pay claims, but they'll be from exactly the same ideology. So you've got one set of unions pushing the equal pay claims, virtually bankrupting Glasgow City Council. Then you've got another union complaining about the consequences of it. I think we need some joined up thinking.
Yes.
To make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yes.
Anyway, right, let's launch it. Shall we start with a little video? Why not? So David took out this video. This is the minister, is that the right word? Probably the female minister who spoke at Trump's and prayed at Trump's inauguration and used it as an opportunity to espouse every left-wing cause going and really have a go at President Trump, which I thought was very sort of inappropriate in that context. But anyway, so this is her being interviewed on another occasion. And David, you can give your thoughts on it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Adherent of the spectrum of life and still respect a woman's right to choose her in reproductive health, and including when to have an abortion in the early stages of pregnancy. So I'll just say that as a Christian, I believe that that's possible and still hold to the full spectrum of life.
Wow. So I remember listening to this lady extolling the virtues of mercy. Please show mercy, Mr. Trump. People are scared. People are worried. Please show mercy to people. And then I started to find out a bit more about this woman, and then of course this video confirms all my worst fears. Where's the mercy for the unborn? You want mercy? I mean, let's start with the most defenseless, the weakest, the most vulnerable of all, and let's just start with that. The fury in me, the anger in me, when I seen this, and I thought the hypocrisy of it. You're telling Trump to be merciful, and you rubber stamping the murder, the dismemberment of babies in the womb. I mean, it's so sickening, and this seems to be the loony left. They seem to have this capacity to be utterly hypocritical and honestly, it's sickening. It really is sickening. And I knew where this was going, because you hear someone, and sad to say that there was even certain Christians saying, "Oh, that's good, that's nice. She was standing up. She's being brave, No, she's not being brave. She's a hypocrite, I'm really. I must admit, it really got under my skin. I don't know how you felt watching that.
I didn't hear it. I haven't heard the whole thing. I would say, let's say you're of a very left-wing persuasion. Okay, that's fine. I mean, obviously, left and right are debatable. It's not like Christians should be one or the other. So she's of a left-wing persuasion. I think it would have been possible to put together a prayer urging Trump to be mindful of the poor and needy and whatever. She could have done that perfectly clearly without having to politicize it.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been perfectly fine. People would have listened to her and thought, oh, well, yeah, she's pretty left-wing. It's obvious where she's coming from.
Yeah.
But they might have thought, well, but who could disagree with that message? Of course, you should be caring and etc. But she didn't do that. She went straight for the politicization.
Yes.
Well, let's get a few good comments. Yeah, good point. Imagine you're the pupil who causes absolute mayhem and causes the teachers to go on strike. That's quite a lot of power, isn't it? It obviously should be. It should be the naughty pupils who fear going to school, not the teachers. Robert, teachers strike in a middle class area. Okay, right. I didn't know that. Where one might think the pupils might not be the worst behaved. Interesting.
Love to see Robert at Vision on Sunday when you're visiting us.
Yes,
he's come before. Bring that lovely young man Jonathan with you, Robert. It'll be great to see you. 2:00, 298 Woodlands Road.
Myself and Neil and Andy Brady speaking on behalf of the family party as well. Most of you maybe haven't seen Andy Brady in the family party context, but we're speaking at David's Church, at Vision Church, at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So do come along if you would like to. Yeah, the ability to give out punishments absolutely critical, and that's the heart of the problem.
Yeah,
it has been for years that
no consequences. So it's a free for all. Yeah. Bring back the Bible. Wow.
Now, bring back the Bible. Did I mention this the other week actually about my research I did in the school where I was working, where I asked people if they thought various things were wrong, like, is it wrong to shoplift? Is it wrong to travel without a ticket? Is it wrong to tell lies? Is it wrong to take drugs, etc.? The whole range of questions. And I also asked the boys in the school, where do you get your moral values from? And I gave them various options. So they could say they get them from society, they get them from their own thinking, they get them from the Bible, or they get them from the law. So they had to choose which one best reflected their views. And I think maybe virtually every single moral question, the pupils with the highest moral standards were the ones who said their morality was guided by the Bible.
Really?
And the ones with the most permissive standards were the ones who said they think it through for themselves. And your education's basically based on, hey, kids, we're going to help you clarify your values to think it through for yourself. And that is the route to basically to the lowest moral standards.
Yes. Wow.
Anyway, I digress, but we...
no, that's very true.
Right. Dominic, see you on Sunday. It'd be great to see you. It'd be great to see you there again. Do come along. Right. Right. Here we go. Right. You have got anything else to say about the lady there? Or shall we move on?
Move on, please, because I was very, very angry. Just the hypocrisy of it, and I just don't understand why there's this huge blind spot. I don't know. The hypocrisy just sickens me. And
I would say that if someone were to have stood up when Biden was inaugurated and had prayed for the unborn and the protection of children from sexualization, etc., I'd have said spot on, do that. Yeah. But the difference is that is clear-cut Christian teaching. So a representative of the church is absolutely, well, it's their job to present those things. But what she was arguing for was not clear-cut Christian teaching. They're debatable. Well, some of it was the opposite of Christian teaching, but some of it was like debatable political ideology, and you shouldn't be using your position as a representative of the
You
church.
have to be consistent. You've got to be consistent. All right, if you want to say let's have mercy on people, please please don't be too hard on people. Well, you've got to be consistent, and surely the place to be most consistent with is are the weakest, the most vulnerable of all.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just the thing
Absolutely.
really troubled me, and yes,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. Okay.
wow.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, do you want to tell us about this story? What is this all about?
Yes. Well, the headline, I think it's the Daily Telegraph today. Why is Network Rail obsessed with gender? Incredibly, there's an amazing amount of bad press for Network Rail. All sorts of signalling issues. Evidently, there's some incredible stats of how many hours have been lost by passengers due to signalling issues, and all sorts of other pathetic excuses for why trains run so often, so late. But no, don't worry about any of that. We've got the answer to it all. Network Rail is going to address you and make you feel much better, even though you stood there in the rain waiting for the train. They're no longer going to call you a passenger, evidently, which is breathtaking. I mean, passenger's not even a gender.
What are they going to call
identity?
What are they going to call people?
Well, there's a whole selection of things here, which they're gonna start to try. There's actually 134-page manual, and extraordinarily, it's called Speak Passenger, which is, as the Telegraph calls it, a grammatical car crash if ever there was one. They've broken their own silly rules by entitling the book with a word that they're saying it isn't allowed. So instead of expectant mother or pregnant woman, they're now going for pregnant person. No boyfriend, wife, husband. No, it must be partner, spouse. No mother or father. It must be replaced with parent. And the irony, as it's quote here, as always with the woke movement, is that in pandering to a tiny minority, they risk alienating the vast majority of their already disenchanted customer base for good. As a waste of time and money, it is hard to beat.
Yeah.
And this will apparently help dissipate your anger we all feel at being stranded. This, according to this article, is irrelevant codswallop. So there's an incredible amount of money and effort being put into this. Well, this is a strange thing. This is in response to all their signaling failures. But what are they doing? They're virtue signaling.
Yeah.
And the irony there is, of course, this is to offset their failure in the train signaling department.
Yeah.
So it really is you just pull your hair out, don't you?
Yeah. Just to clarify, Network Rail does run the rail network in Scotland as well. So this does apply in Scotland.
Right,
I think with these things, I think there's a feeling abroad that this is all going to fade away. Now Trump's the president, and a few companies are backing off from things. I mean, the tide's turned. This is going to disappear. Well, I'm not quite so optimistic about that. I mean, we've presidents come and go. It's pretty deeply ingrained in a lot of parts of society. But there is pushback. Maybe there is going to go. I really resent the fact that there'll be some employee who will have got the job because of their diversity credentials, no doubt, who's getting paid an awful lot of money to do this. That's something I find, that's pretty frustrating.
134-page manual, navel gazing, as this article refers to it. And then it finishes off with, drop the virtue signaling and sort out the train signaling.
I'll tell you what I do. It may well be that as the tide turns, maybe the bosses at Network Rail will say, okay, this is not so fashionable anymore. Let's just drop it. but I would say that they should be fired, not out of like vengeance, not because they disagreed with me, but because they've shown that they're just willing to pretend to be making a stand on something that they don't really believe in.
Yeah.
And if that's what they're like, they're not fit to be leaders of this enormous organization. So they should go. So it's not vengeance. That's not, oh, they disagreed with me, so they should be fired. But they've demonstrated that they're insincere in their approach to it. So they should go.
Yes. Wow.
Right. Let's see what we've got next. The cat ban.
Oh boy! So the Scottish government have got the SAWC, the Scottish Animal Welfare Commission, to prepare a report, which in this report it suggests a ban on cats in certain places, because cats are very susceptible to going out and playing havoc with the local wildlife. So when the journalists latched onto this and challenged the SNP about this, the government about this in Scotland, they said, well, we'll be taking into consideration all recommendations. And then John Swinney, I think he got well and truly fed up today when he was doorstepped and then basically hounded with, why are you banning cats? And he says, I want to make clear I am not banning cats. I'm not doing this, but this it is another example of us focusing. Well, Jesus had a saying: we strain at a gnat and we swallow a camel. We concentrate on nonsensical, silly things, whilst huge lorries of nonsense are being driven through society, and we're not even blinking, and here we go again. This is just
it's an interesting insight behind the scenes, isn't it? Because as far as the Scottish government's concerned, this is the stuff of government. It's that there's various campaigning groups, most of which are paid by the government, and they just sit around and write their ideas on post-it notes in a nice hotel and enjoy huge salaries, and then get promoted from one organization to another one. Then they go and work for the government. Then they go back to. There's this huge sort of ecosystem of in some cases very highly paid people just promoting their own values, not doing anything remotely useful for the country. This is just an occasion where it's come to the surface in the media. Jonathan, this is absolutely the SNP's agenda. Now, maybe since the Greens have disappeared on the scene from the government, maybe it's been watered down slightly. But yes, they would rather see anything turned into wild land rather than doing anything productive. I told the story last summer when I went to the Duns show. The talk of the show was that a whole farm had been bought in the vicinity, and the whole farm was just going to be covered in trees, and it had been bought by some company that needed to offset its carbon emissions. So it bought a whole farm in the borders, and the production capacity of that farm was going to be totally eliminated just to as a carbon offset thing. And apparently if you're a farmer, there's more money in turning your field into a wildflower meadow in some cases than there is putting some cows on it and getting some delicious food from it. But again, where they think the food comes from instead, I don't know. Maybe the cats. I don't know. But that's interesting story. Just have a look what we've got.
No room to swing a cat in Scotland.
Right, so I haven't read this whole. Right, rare to see a cat waste its energy on catching birds. Far too intelligent than that. This is big pharma due to increase in the diseases spread by animals that the cats kill. I wouldn't say that was a deliberate plan, but I'm sure there will be negative consequences of reducing the number of cats as well.
Of course, your famous backdrop is a cat there in the background, isn't there? Isn't it?
So yes, ready to pounce.
Ready to pounce. So we don't want that cat to have to be dispatched.
Yeah,
definitely not.
I used to. Have you ever had a cat, David?
No, I have not. No, goodness me. Cats look down on humans. I don't get it at all. They
Oh,
they
they do. Yeah,
they,
I had
they
a cat
rule
for a
the
while.
roost. Hmm?
I had a cat.
Yeah.
I called her Emily to try and make her sound nice because she was just an absolute monster. Where I was living, there were a lot of rabbits around. So in the springtime, when the rabbits were young, she would catch them and bring them into my living room, and just there'd be like bits of rabbit all over there was one time she brought a rabbit in. Now she'd play with them as cats do, just for fun, to torture them and like chase them around. So one time she'd got this poor little rabbit cornered and was giving it a poke every now and again to chase it around. So I thought I'd show mercy on this poor little rabbit. I'd take it outside and let it free. So I picked it up, took it downstairs and put it down on the ground. And it ran off, and it ran in a circle. So it got a leg missing.
Oh, for goodness.
So Emily the cat, if anyone was fooled by the nice name Emily, don't believe it. Emily was a monster.
Yes.
But anyway, she's long departed. Right. Okay. Let's. I'll just say what I find with ChatGPT actually before you go. I find ChatGPT seems to adjust to what it thinks I believe, and it speaks my language to me within the same conversation.
Right.
So if I start talking to it, like I was using this for, if I use it for Christian things, it will start talking to me as though it's a Christian, or as though the Christian view is just the ordinary view, which is quite interesting. I don't know if that's deliberate or because they're the sources it's accessing. That's what I've been finding. But anyway, this is political bias being reported here.
Yeah, well, it was asked by this particular journalist what who the greatest example of political leadership in the world today was, and it came up with Keir Starmer. Incredible. so that's not the greatest advertisement at all. Keir Starmer first, Kemi Badenoch second, Nigel Farage third in terms of leadership. Says that, quote, beauty is subjective when it was asked if white women are beautiful, but replies absolutely when asked the same question about black women. So
do you think that's ChatGPT being biased, or is that its sources are biased?
It's got to be the sources, hasn't it? You've got to go back to where the where it's
well, it could be either. I mean, it could be that they programmed the thing. I mean, I think these things are generally self-learning, and the whole secret to them, the reason they can be so amazing, is they don't need heuristics or whatever. They don't need like specific algorithms to deal with particular issues. Like they don't need an algorithm to assess leadership, whatever. They've got a general algorithm. It's like it can sort of teach itself. But I would imagine they do interfere with that as well to prevent it, for example, giving you advice about how to commit a serious crime. So they will interfere in it to prevent various things. But in general, I think the AI systems just do their thing. They get the data, follow their procedure, teach themselves about it, and then use their reasoning capacity and present answers. Yeah, so it could be the sources, or it could be a bias in ChatGPT. I find, as far as the family party is concerned, AI systems are much better than the media. If someone wants to know about the family party, I'd much rather they sat with an AI system, rather than did an internet search for which the Wikipedia page would be pretty high. And your Wikipedia page is not as bad as it was, but it's still pretty bad. It's a hit piece in some ways, but ChatGPT isn't. ChatGPT prioritizes our policies.
Yeah, we did use that a bit at the election, didn't we? In July last year,
Yeah.
And that was to a degree of success as well. It says here, it refused to tell a sexist joke, even if it would prevent a nuclear war.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's it being programmed.
We're not for a moment suggesting that sexist jokes should be told, but it's just making the point that it was not willing to make a joke about an illegal immigrant, but was happy to tell one about a British person.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
again, it does it just you know what it is? There was a big outcry with DeepSeek, the Chinese equivalent,
Mhm.
which everyone's up in arms about because they're producing it so cheaply and it's even better than what the
Uh-huh.
Americans have made. And DeepSeek, if you ask it about Tiananmen Square, you know, and what happened there, you'll draw a very stony blank.
Yeah.
So everyone's, you know, pointing the finger at DeepSeek, and isn't it terrible? You know, the Chinese are basically rewriting history. But
Mhm.
we have the same issue. We have the same issue going on
Yeah.
with Chat GPT. You know, so
Yeah.
we've got to be fair on. We've got to be even-handed, haven't we?
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Mellon says ChatGPT is rubbish at the lottery numbers. So that's good to know.
Yes.
I found it pretty rubbish with horse race predictions as well. Cost me a fortune. Okay. Oh, no, wrong one. We do want that. Let's take the comment away. Right. So what have we got coming up next? Right. What's the story here? Ex-Tory. So this is their deputy chairman.
Yes.
Your opposite number in the Conservative Party.
He's been kicked out now. He lost at the election in July. This was, I just had an affinity with this chap because he was the deputy chairman of the Tory party before he lost his place. But he's decided, and he's 55, same age as me as well. So 55, deputy chairman. So I'm thinking, wow, this guy's, you know, he's got a lot in common here. He's off to Ukraine. He's off to Ukraine to fight for the Ukrainians. And he's willing even to go onto the front line. So this is just a picture of him. Amazingly, ex-Tory chief joins Ukraine fight.
Has he got military experience?
Yeah, I think he has actually from his times past.
Mhm.
But amazingly, I don't know how you would feel about me announcing that. Not that I'm going to. There's going to be no breaking news tonight. You know, I'm off.
Well, it's interesting. When the Ukraine war first started, I don't think I'd be much use to him if I did go. But there was a part of me that was thinking, right, what could I do to go and help? If I had been someone I thought might have been any sort of like military trained and fit and young or whatever, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I would have felt a pull. I said, a boy I taught went. I haven't heard any more news. There was a newspaper report that he'd gone. It was down in the Borders, young man. His only military experience was in the cadet force at school. Wow. And he went to. I don't know if he's still there. I don't know how that worked out. I know there's some people who were there who've got some very alternative views about the war in Ukraine, but I tend to take a pretty straightforward view.
Yeah, I'm interesting. But how would you go about signing up for that? I mean, who do you don't go to our Ministry of Defence, do you? Surely, I bet
it's not that difficult. I think if you just turn up there, even. Yeah, I don't know.
In Ukraine, really, you just fly over there and present yourself, saying, "I want to help."
Yeah, I guess so. It's interesting. Yeah, interesting.
Wow. Yes.
In fact, just let's just skip on a bit and just talk about these things before we go back. Right, we've already mentioned on Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. I and others are at Vision Church, that's David's church, in Glasgow. So you can find information on our social media, 2 p.m. on Sunday. On Saturday evening, we are actually, the forecast is good. We're going to take our 18,000 lights to the forecourt of the Scottish Parliament, 7 p.m. on Saturday. Do join us for that. It's going to be quite a sight. We'll get some brilliant photographs. We'll have a couple of speeches, time of silent reflection, probably go and get a drink somewhere nearby afterwards. So, yeah, it will be well worth your time, and we would appreciate your support at that. Also, as well, if you want to record a couple of sentences on video, we'll record those, we'll film you, and then we'll see if we can edit those into a compilation. No guarantee we'll publish what you've got to say. We'll see how things fit together. But if you would like to do that, have a couple of words up your sleeve, a couple of sentences, and we can film that. So that's Saturday, 7 p.m. Other things coming up while I'm at it. 7th of March in Aberdeen, 7 p.m. I'm giving a talk about assisted suicide. So Aberdeen, 7th of March. 8th of March, we're doing the 18,000 lights at the Castle Gate in Aberdeen. So right in the centre of Aberdeen. I think that's earlier in the day. I can't remember the time for that. It'll be on social media. What else? And then 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, maybe. We're going to be up in Thurso. We're having a meeting in Thurso on the 27th. Orkney. There's talk of a meeting in Kirkwall, definitely, but also maybe Westray, maybe Stronsey again as well. We'll see. But that'll be over that weekend as well. And we'll also have a meeting in Inverness. We had to cancel our meeting in Inverness this weekend because we were delayed by the ferry. Yeah, just on that topic, yeah, we had a good weekend in Western Isles, staying with Stephen. We've seen Stephen commenting here tonight as well, our chairman in the Western Isles. And so we had a meeting on Saturday, and we met a lot of people as well through other contexts. I spoke at a church a bit on Sunday night, and we met people in other ways as well. So we made contact with a lot of our supporters in the Western Isles. So, yeah, it'd be great to see you at any of those things. Let's carry on. Right, where were we up to? Right, we've had that one. Right, NHS requisitioning. This is a story that's bubbled away for a long time about the NHS buying things far, far above the price you could buy them if you just went on eBay or Amazon or whatever, or to your local supermarket.
Yep.
So some people seem to be making a lot of money. Yeah.
Paracetamol, local supermarket, average 37 pence for a packet of paracetamol. And it would appear that our struggling Scottish NHS are paying £8. And it's unbelievable. The figures are absolutely frightening, because the cost to taxpayer for the common painkiller was more than £14 million, with a dispensing fee for the prescription estimated to add nearly £7 million to the bill.
Yeah.
We're just being ripped off completely, and the Scottish government seems to just be watching this happen, and allowing it to happen. It's a scandal. It's outrageous. It really is.
It's something you think it would be so. If they just gave me the job, said, right, you've got a year, look into all this, try and sort this out. Surely you can make massive progress with that. But for one reason or another, it's not happening. Leo Lanahan, our chairman, tells a story of a type of chair you can have in a doctor's surgery. Pretty straightforward, like metal pole chair with some plastic padding on it. And he said the standard chair costs, I don't know, £30 or something. But if it has arms on it, it becomes a piece of medical equipment, and so it costs like 3 times as much. Wow. Even though it's more or less the same thing. But it just gets classified as some specialist medical equipment, and then the price goes through the roof. So great work if you can get it, supplying things to the NHS. But it's good that these things have been brought to light, isn't it? So,
well, it certainly is. Yes.
Right. Scottish Labour. This is a very interesting story. What's your take here? I mean, they've slumped in the polls. That's the heart of the matter, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the article there is entitled "Joined at the Hip" because it's suggesting that despite the election results back in July, how well Labour did, how badly the SNP did, it's shocking, but it would appear that given that Starmer's struggling so terribly, this is affecting Labour's fortunes north of the border. And the Anasawa is now beginning to understand that his fate is chained to the success or failure of Sir Keir's ministry in Whitehall. But what's amazing is we know the SNP, what a dreadful last 24, 36 months that they've had, illustrated by the general election result. Swinney comes along. Swinney's only just treading water. He's not doing anything spectacular whatsoever. He's literally standing still. But in just standing still, his fortunes are rising, because Labour is so appalling that and their start since getting into government has been so dreadful that we have this possibility that SNP are going to do a bit better than they expected next year in the Scottish elections.
Yeah.
What do you think, Richard?
I think one of the things I take from this is it just shows how powerless a leader like Anas Sarwar is.
Yeah.
And that's politics. Because
Yeah.
if Anas Sarwar, I mean, he was made leader, I think he believes the same as Humza Yousaf, but he just comes across as a much nicer, more reasonable person. When I listen to Anas Sarwar, I might completely disagree with him, but I'm not like wildly irritated the way you are with Humza Yousaf. So Anas Sarwar, has he done a good job? By his own lights, has he done a good job? Well, I'd say he sort of has probably. But initially, it made no difference. But then the SNP goes downhill and Labour comes up, along with the National Labour Party. Was that anything to do with Anas Sarwar? Not really.
No.
Not really. And now they've gone right down. Anything to do with Anas Sarwar? No. And that's politics. You're in the game and you rise and fall with the tides that come along. So if Anas Sarwar is now getting his committees together saying, oh, right, what can we do about this? To be honest, there's probably not much you can do. I mean, that's the point of this little editorial. There's not much you can do about it because his fortunes are out of his control. And that's the way with the family party to some extent as well. At the moment, the wider political scene is not in our favor. We're swimming against the tide quite a bit with the rise of reform in particular. But things will change. Things will change.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows the way things change in the future. So with politics, you've got to be in the game, ready for when the opportunities come your way. But so Labour, who knows what will happen about the Scottish election? That's not that far away now. It's not much more than a year.
No. So there's a suggestion here, though, Richard. I'll just get your opinion on your thinking. That what Anas Sarwar needs to do is make a strategic choice, and this is the way they put it here. He must put clear red water between himself and his mother party. Is there a way? Is there a way of Sarwar being able to divorce himself of the catastrophe that's happening in London, but retain his Labour identity and still appeal to voters that although all that's happening down there, I'm not a part of that. I'm different, and making it clear why he's very different. Is that a possibility?
I don't know. No, it's not. No. In an ideal world where every voter was highly knowledgeable and researched the specific policies of Scottish Labour, then that could maybe be feasible. But for the huge majority of voters, when I say huge majority, I'm talking like 95%. They will just, their main impression of the Labour Party will be from UK. Because still, I think UK politics dominates people's thinking. Maybe during the Scottish election period it changes a bit, but with Labour, people's impression is going to be because they're the UK government. So I think no matter how much Anas Sarwar tries to distance himself or distinguish himself from the UK Labour Party, it's not going to cut through with the electorate. And the danger, of course, is the more you do that, you're implying criticism of the UK Labour Party. So it's though you're saying vote Labour, but the people we told you to vote for at the last general election, well, they're terrible, obviously. But we're different than the Labour. I mean, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
No.
Something else interesting here, I think reform could end up doing the SNP a favour in the Scottish election. The way it's looking at the moment, because it looks like the Conservatives are basically going to lose half their seats, and instead they'll go to reform. So there are not going to be more right-leaning, if you could call the Conservatives right-leaning. There's not going to be more right-leaning MSPs. It's just, instead of being all Conservative, they're going to be half Conservative, half Reform. And the consequence of that could be that if it comes to time to make a coalition or an informal coalition of some sort, then if they want to make a unionist coalition, that would be Labour, Lib Dems, Labour and Conservatives. I think Labour and Conservatives is not impossible, because now reform's on the scene. The Conservatives, well, they're maybe not quite as evil as they used to be in Labour's eyes. So maybe they could stretch to including the Conservatives in some sort of informal coalition, but reform, no way. That's not going to happen. So I think it might be that Labour will be forced or will decide to go into a grand coalition with the SNP rather than a unionist coalition, and that might be the consequence of the reform MSPs. That's my speculation, but I think the way things are looking now, that's the way it could possibly go, which would be a strange situation if that happens. So.
The sands are shifting, though, aren't they? They really are.
Yeah.
Beneath our feet.
Well, let's just have some words of wisdom for John.
Yes.
Reform will come across as some kind of caring, pro-people, kind of pro-life party. They're not pro-life by any stretch of the imagination. Absolutely.
Not at all.
Their MPs were pro-assisted suicide. They were a pro-abortion party.
Yeah, not with the unborn or with the elderly.
No. Right. Let's keep going. Who would the Scottish Family Party, let's see, favour as First Minister? None, probably. I think, let's say, for example, let's say I was the sole Scottish Family Party MSP, and then as an MSP, you get a vote for who's going to be First Minister. I think my line would be, I would vote for myself. I would refuse to vote for any leader of a party that wasn't pro-life. So I wouldn't vote for any of the others. So I think that would be be my line.
I'm in that position as well. Yeah.
And if my vote made the difference, then they'd have to come knocking on my office door in the Parliament, trying to persuade me, and I'd be ready to drive a very hard bargain on that. But good question, interesting question. All right, David. Right, this is a very interesting story, David. Fire away. Tell us.
Well, this is extraordinary. A girl aged 13 at the time of the offence, incredibly stabbed 2 teachers and a fellow pupil. And the reason I've highlighted this is there's a line, you might be able to see it if you can hone in on in the very first paragraph, where the dad, so this is the father of the girl, and this raised all sorts of questions in my mind about society, the society that we have. The dad claims, now you're not going to hear me wrong here, so if you think you heard me wrong the first time because of how outrageous this is, then you did hear it right. The father has claimed, saying that her actions, the actions of his daughter, had, quote, some merit. Basically, she took knives to school before this happening. The school had discovered this knife and she'd been suspended. And then the dad had to check her bag every day to make sure there was no more knives in her bag when she was brought back into the school. On this particular morning when this awful tragedy happened, he slept in, so she was off out the door before he could check her bag, and she stabbed these 2 teachers, this fellow pupil. She's suggesting that she had to do this because she was being bullied, and this is the reason why the dad, the father, has said that what she's done has some merit.
But bullied by the teachers that she tried to kill? Or...
Well, she's bullied by other pupils, but the claim is, and that is very much an allegation, that the teachers were aware of this and weren't doing enough. So therefore they were guilty as well. But it's probably not too much of a leap to infer that this girl taking knives into the school maybe wasn't a paragon of virtue in terms of her relationships with other pupils. I think that is very, very much, you can't reach any other conclusion. It's this shifting the responsibility, you see, even in the face of 2 teachers being stabbed and a fellow pupil, not taking any kind of, in fact, shifting the blame, pointing the finger elsewhere, you see. And actually saying that there's some merit. Now, you can see where this is, if the father feels like that, then you can understand entirely why the daughter has gone through with this.
This reminds me of the Southport murderer.
Yeah.
Because the story is, isn't it, that his father prevented him from going to his own school, which was pretty apparent. He was intent on a mass stabbing at his own school. His father stopped him from going. But I think that father, okay, you can understand the moral dilemma. We can sympathize with him, but you've got to be absolutely clear that father should have been calling the police.
Yes.
If you think someone you know, no matter how closely related, is intent on a serious crime like this, you can't just take it into your own hands to try and talk them out of it. You've got to go to the police. Now, I think the father of the Southport murderer, I think there could be a case there for him being prosecuted for failing to report that.
Yeah.
As much as you might sympathize with him, you have to report that to the police in those circumstances.
Yes.
It just reminds me of I could tell lots of stories from my time teaching. There's one in particular where a boy did something. I won't go into detail, but he did something. It wasn't a big deal, but he's misbehaving, like deliberately making a mess somewhere. And a teacher watched him do it, saw him do it. So the teacher gave him a punishment, or at the very least, like made him clear up, maybe, do a bit of cleaning up, whatever. And then the boy's dad came in and said, well, why is my son being victimized? Why is he being punished for something he never did? He didn't do that. And I said to the father, well, he did. A teacher saw him do it. And he said, no, he didn't do it. The teacher's not right. The teacher's made a mistake. So I saw that the teacher's just next door. If you don't mind just waiting, I'll go and fetch him and he can come and tell you. So the teacher came through and said, yes, that this is what happened. I watched him. This again, it's not like some really serious thing that had happened. No. But the teacher came through and said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I saw him do it. And the dad just looked this teacher in the eye and said, no, he didn't do it.
Oh.
And you think, well,
what?
Where'd you go for that? I suppose one interesting thing to add about that father is he was a local councillor.
Was he really?
Yeah. I mean,
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. That's a very, very interesting insight from that story.
Wow.
Let's move on. This is I made a video on this topic quite recently. We won't dwell on this one, but this is just Channel 4. This channel, no, it's an ITV documentary. Normally, it's Channel 4 that's attacking everything about traditional family life. But there is this huge worldwide movement promoting childlessness as a positive choice, and it's just drip, drip, drip. And they've basically got the reins of the media. You won't really see a TV program about a family with 6 kids deciding whether or not to have a 7th. I'm talking about how great having the big family is. I mean, you would never get a program like that. But these things about childlessness, or they're discussing its merits, are 10 a penny. Do you have anything in particular to add to that one, or was that?
Well, I just there's so many angles to this story because Simmons is prolific sportswoman, incredible sportswoman, gold medalist. So here she is. She's obviously doing this program, but is she not an absolutely shining example of someone disabled and given you could say a very difficult start in life? What she's achieved, the sheer prominence of her achievements and her awards, and the gold medalist, it just shows you. This idea that certain life just isn't valuable enough to save or to keep. She's a shining example of the. I'm not sure she fully appreciates this or is aware of this. What an example she could be to this world as to what can be achieved when you are dealt a very difficult hand.
Oh, right. Sorry, I've misunderstood this. So the point of the program is to explore whether or not she ought to have children, considering that there might be an inherited health problem.
I mean, the article doesn't actually nail it exactly how they're how they're approaching it. Okay. She talks about this. It's a deeply personal subject to me. I'm just so grateful that to all those who have let me embark on what are deeply personal, emotional journeys of their own, and she'll explore the emotionally fraught decisions she would the emotionally fraught decisions she would and expectant parents do face when they are told that their child may be born with a disability.
Okay.
I'm hoping, because the conclusion of they're probably not wanting to give any spoilers, but I'm hoping she'll say, well, you might have these difficult decisions to make, as to your child that's disabled. Look at me. Look what I achieved. Look what I've been able to do with my life.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a poster girl for attainment and achievement. And so I'm hoping the program is heading in that's where I would like it to go. I need to sit down and watch it when it comes on.
That's interesting. I think the sort of philosophical arguments relating to eugenics, but the logic does lead to some conclusions that might seem a bit counterintuitive. For example, considering whether a child might be born with some sort of congenital illness, for example, I think the logic and the moral arguments related to eugenics say that this should be discounted from the decision-making process. So if it is part of a factor in the decision-making process, that implies that you value some children more than others.
Yeah.
Lifestyle. We don't want that sort of child. No. We don't want one that's disabled. We want a better one. We want a proper one. And as soon as you start making those sort of decisions, then that is amounting to eugenics. I mean, just for the sake, we don't need to go into this, but the most extreme application of that I've heard discuss is if you've got, say, for example, a woman who's taken a drug for a period of, say, 3 months, and it's known that drug leads to problems. If someone becomes pregnant during that period, then it's very likely to lead to problems. And so the doctor could say to the woman, right, we advise don't get pregnant during this 3-month period, just wait until after. Now, I think probably all of us would think, well, that's perfectly reasonable advice. But some people would say that in deciding to wait, you're making a value judgment and saying that basically you prefer a healthy child. Because it's not that there's one child and you're deciding if they're going to be healthy or not. It's producing one person or another person. And you're saying, I would prefer the healthy child rather than the one with the problem. So you're putting greater value on the one with the problem. It's quite deep water. Get into those things. It's very interesting. Okay, right. We're running out of time, but let's just see what else we've got. Well, what have we got here, David? What's this all about?
Yes, well, I wasn't aware of this. This is why this is a good exercise for me as I read my newspapers prior to coming on to your live stream. I wasn't aware that the difference between one of the big differences between the Scottish assisted dying effort and the Westminster one is that incredibly they're including 16-year-olds in their bill up here in Scotland, 18 down south, but 16 up here. So this comes from the Glasgow Herald today, but it's very concerning indeed, particularly in the light of you can't drink alcohol, for instance, until you're 18. Yes, but yet here we have someone able to make a decision to take their own life, and all the mental health issues that go along with that, which have brought that person to that tragic conclusion. It just seems awful, absolutely awful that we should be including 16-year-olds, and this is a big barrier, evidently, to this bill going through up here. So
they're saying that. I hadn't been aware of people arguing against it, particularly on that basis.
Right.
During the previous ones as well, they included 16-year-olds. So I think it does reflect the values of the Scottish political establishment. It's all children's rights, you've got to treat children the same as adults. We mustn't discriminate against children. We must liberate children from adult oppression. In other words, we've got to treat them the same. So the upshot of all that sort of children's rights philosophy is that, well, of course you've got to allow 16-year-olds. And then, of course, it's a slippery slope. Why should a 15-year-old have to suffer when a 16-year-old can? And so before you know it, you're sliding down the slippery slope, and it goes to children, as it has done certainly in Belgium, I think in the Netherlands as well. Slowly but surely.
Yeah,
degenerates.
It's the what do they call it again? The third reading of Kim Ledbetter's private members bill to legalise assisted suicide, and I wrote to my local MP, Joni, again about this. She'd voted for it, but I just wonder if I could read this, Richard. I asked her to consider the following, and these are very fascinating facts. None of the 9 lawyers invited to give evidence to the committee is clearly opposed to the bill. So they're very much cherry-picked who's going to be giving evidence. None of the overseas witnesses called to give evidence is opposed to the bill. The committee declined to hear from anyone in Canada. Now, this is unbelievable, where assisted suicide has become the 5th leading cause of death. The committee originally voted not to hear evidence from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, even though there are serious concerns expressed by many MPs about the risk of coercion and mental capacity. Only after outrage expressed on social media did Kim Ledbetter back down and say that she would ensure that they hear evidence from the Royal College of Psychiatrists. Just 3 more. The committee also initially declined to hear from a single representative of a disability rights organization. It's harping back to our previous article, isn't it? Only after further criticism was an amendment tabled by Kim Ledbetter to hear from Disability Rights UK. The committee will still not hear from the British Geriatrics Society, even though this is the group most likely to be affected by the bill. And then finally, the committee will not hear from any other physical disability organisation. So I made all these points to my MP, Joni, in East Kilbride. I don't know. I've not had a reply from her. I sent that. When did I send that? That was a good few days ago now, 30th of January. So that's nearly 5 or 6 days ago.
Yeah. I always think with these things that the die was cast on the 4th of July, where people around Britain went and made their votes, went to the polling station. They voted. A lot of people voted for Labour, which it wasn't quite their policy, but they were obviously leaning towards introducing assisted suicide. The SNP is the same. It's like openly leans towards open to the possibility, making space for the discussion type thing. Yes. So I think on election day, the die was cast, and it was going to happen, and it's happened. And I think so. Which party in the UK Parliament or the Scottish Parliament would undo it? Well, none of them. Not all. But that's the difference with the family party.
Oh, it is.
We don't just like drag our heels over the latest thing and then forget about it. We would go back and fix things. Right. Just one more comment to bring in. Right, Dominic. That's an interesting one.
Oh, hi, Dominic.
Alcohol age going down to 16. I'm not sure I agree with that, but age of consent up to 18. We discussed that last week. I think I'm very open to that suggestion. I think, and then actually properly enforce it as well. So, yeah, well worth considering. And I hope to see you on Sunday, Dominic. Right, our time has passed. We've got about another hour's worth of material here, but we'll call it today. I sometimes think we should do 2 live streams a week, or make it a bit longer, but we shall see. So, David, thank you very much for joining me tonight, and thanks for all the comments.
Yes,
well. We had a lot of comments in there. Yeah, and it'd be great to see you at any of our events coming up. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and good night. And good night to David.
Good night, all.